Hollywood sold the world a dream. Bright lights, red carpets, perfect smiles. But behind the cameras, another Hollywood existed. A darker one. A place where power mattered more than truth, and where some of the biggest stars in history hid secrets the public was never supposed to see. For decades, audiences only saw the glamour. The people working inside the industry saw something very different. And few people were closer to that world than Ron Howard. Ron Howard grew up in Hollywood. Long before he became an award-winning director, he was a child actor surrounded by some of the most powerful figures in entertainment. He watched the system from the inside. And over the years, he began speaking about a side of old Hollywood most people never knew existed. A world where studios protected stars at all costs. Where scandals disappeared overnight. And where victims often had nowhere to turn. But what Ron Howard revealed about some of these legendary names shocked even longtime movie fans. And the final name on this list may be the most surprising of all. Back in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, Hollywood studios controlled almost everything. Actors signed contracts that gave studios power over their careers, their relationships, even their private lives. Entire departments existed for one reason only: burying bad publicity. These people were called fixers, and they were experts at making problems disappear. If a famous actor got arrested, the fixer made a phone call. If damaging stories reached reporters, the fixer paid to kill the story. If someone tried speaking publicly about abuse or misconduct, careers could suddenly vanish. According to Ron Howard, the system was not broken. It was built that way from the start. Protect the stars. Protect the profits. And protect the illusion no matter what happened behind closed doors. And that's where the real story begins. Before superheroes filled movie screens, Hollywood already had its ultimate leading man. His name was Errol Flynn. He was handsome, charming, fearless, and impossibly charismatic. On screen, he played heroes like Robin Hood and Captain Blood. Audiences adored him. Studios treated him like royalty. But behind the scenes, rumors followed him everywhere. The drinking was legendary. The parties were wild. But in 1942, everything nearly collapsed. 2 teenage girls accused Flynn of crimes that shocked the country. The case exploded into one of the biggest celebrity trials Hollywood had ever seen. Yet when Flynn walked into court, he acted like none of it mattered. Calm, smiling, untouchable. And somehow, the public seemed to side with him. Flynn was acquitted, and instead of damaging his image, the scandal almost strengthened it. Fan mail poured in. Crowds celebrated him outside the courthouse. A disturbing phrase inspired by the case even became a joke people repeated casually for years. Ron Howard later pointed out that the most chilling part of the entire story was not the trial itself. It was the reaction. Hollywood had taught audiences that fame mattered more than accountability. And people believed it. Flynn returned to making movies like nothing had happened. The studios protected him. The public moved on. But the people affected by the scandal never truly disappeared from the story. They were simply forgotten. And that pattern would repeat again and again in Hollywood history. But what happened with the next legend may be even harder to understand. Charlie Chaplin was not just a movie star. He was cinema itself. The Little Tramp character became one of the most recognizable images on Earth. Critics called him a genius. Historians compared him to Shakespeare. Even today, his influence on film is undeniable. But behind the legendary image, there was another side to Chaplin that made many people deeply uncomfortable. Chaplin's relationships with extremely young women followed him throughout his life. His first wife was 16. His second wife was also 16 and pregnant when they married. Later, he became involved with 18-year-old Una O'Neill while already facing another disturbing scandal involving a young actress named Joan Barry. The Barry case painted a troubling picture. Allegations emerged suggesting Chaplin used his enormous power and influence to manipulate vulnerable young women trying to enter the industry. At the height of his fame, Chaplin controlled his own studio. He controlled jobs, careers, opportunities. According to Ron Howard, that kind of unchecked power can become incredibly dangerous because it disguises exploitation as mentorship. Even when scandals surrounded Chaplin, many people still defended him because they could not separate the beloved artist from the man himself. Eventually, Chaplin left the United States during the Red Scare era, officially because of political controversy. But many historians believe growing discomfort over his personal life also played a major role. Still, he remained celebrated around the world. The women connected to those scandals faded quietly into the background. And once again, Hollywood's image machine kept moving forward. But while some stars hid disturbing secrets from fans, others hid them from their own families. For millions of Americans, Bing Crosby represented comfort. His music became part of Christmas traditions. His voice felt warm and familiar. On screen, he appeared calm, kind, and loving. Hollywood presented him as the perfect father figure. But according to several of his own children, life at home felt completely different. Bing Crosby's son Gary later released a memoir describing a childhood ruled by fear. He claimed punishments were harsh and unpredictable. The children were allegedly weighed regularly, and even small mistakes could trigger severe discipline. Gary described living in constant anxiety, never knowing what might make his father angry next. And the tragedy did not end there. As adults, several of Crosby's sons struggled heavily with alcoholism and emotional pain. 2 of them later died by suicide. For many people, those heartbreaking outcomes forced a second look at the family's history. Ron Howard has said Hollywood became incredibly skilled at building myths around stars like Crosby. The loving father image sold records, movies, and radio programs. But according to the family's own accounts, that public image hid something far darker behind closed doors. And then came Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford did not simply want fame. She wanted perfection. She built herself into one of Hollywood's most glamorous stars through sheer determination and discipline. Fans admired her elegance. Studios worshipped her image. She even won an Academy Award playing a devoted mother in Mildred Pierce. But years later, her daughter Christina Crawford released a memoir that changed everything. The book was called Mommy Dearest. Instead of describing a glamorous Hollywood childhood, Christina described fear, rage, and strict punishments inside the family home. According to her account, Joan Crawford carefully controlled every detail of life around her. Publicly, Crawford appeared warm and loving. Privately, Christina claimed life inside the house felt terrifying and unpredictable. The most famous moment from the memoir became the line, "No more wire hangers." Over time, people turned it into a joke. But Christina insisted there was nothing funny about it. To her, it represented fear and emotional pain that lasted long after childhood ended. Ron Howard later described Crawford as someone who mastered what he called the performance of virtue. She carefully created a public identity that looked nothing like private reality. Fans saw glamour. Her children allegedly experienced something very different. And Hollywood once again helped preserve the illusion. But the next name on the list may be one of the most complicated stories of all. Kirk Douglas was celebrated as one of Hollywood's greatest heroes. Strong, intelligent, fearless. Movies like Spartacus and Paths of Glory turned him into a symbol of strength and moral courage. He was also praised for publicly supporting blacklisted writer Dalton Trumbo during one of Hollywood's darkest political periods. That decision helped change careers and challenge the industry's fear-driven blacklist system. But years after Douglas passed away, disturbing allegations connected to actress Natalie Wood began resurfacing. According to people close to Wood, she privately described an encounter with Douglas during her teenage years that she considered an assault. The allegations were never publicly addressed during Douglas's lifetime. After his death, the story gained new attention when friends and family members spoke about what Wood had allegedly told them. And that contradiction is what Ron Howard found most important. Douglas was capable of real courage. He also faced accusations of deeply troubling behavior. Both things existed at the same time. Howard suggested that old Hollywood teaches an uncomfortable truth. Talent and cruelty can exist inside the same person. The industry often celebrated the heroic parts while ignoring everything else. The Spartacus story became legendary. The Natalie Wood allegations barely entered public conversation at all. And then came the name Ron Howard reportedly struggled the longest to discuss openly. Walt Disney. For generations, Disney represented magic, childhood wonder, family memories, animated classics that shaped entire generations. But behind the smiling public image, former employees described a far harsher reality inside the studio walls. According to multiple accounts, Disney ruled his company with intense control. Employees described surveillance, loyalty tests, and sudden firings for anyone who challenged him. Artists who helped create Disney classics were sometimes denied credit or pushed out entirely. But the most controversial part of Disney's history involved politics. During the late 1940s and 50s, Hollywood became consumed by anti-communist fear. Careers were destroyed overnight by accusations and suspicion. And according to historical records, Walt Disney actively cooperated with the blacklist system. He provided names of suspected communist sympathizers to government investigators and supported efforts that ruined careers across the entertainment industry. Writers lost jobs. Directors vanished from studios. Families suffered financially and emotionally. And many people were punished not for crimes, but for their political beliefs or associations. That is what makes Disney such a difficult figure for many historians. The movies brought joy to millions. The stories became part of childhood itself. But the man behind the empire was far more complicated than the magical image attached to his name. Ron Howard has often said one of Hollywood's hardest truths is learning to separate art from the people who create it. Because behind some of cinema's most beloved legends were stories filled with manipulation, fear, exploitation, and silence. Hollywood's golden age gave the world unforgettable movies and larger-than-life stars. But behind the glamour, another reality existed. One built on secrecy and power. Ron Howard's reflections remind us that fame does not always reveal who someone truly is once the cameras stop rolling. Sometimes the brightest stars cast the darkest shadows of all.